Okay, so we are starting company law, and the thing you need to understand, let's quickly go over what it covers. Now, regarding everything you're going to cover, we're going to divide rather the thing, we're going to divide these costs or this unit into 4 parts. Okay, so 4 parts, which sort of explain how companies operate. So the first bit will be dealing with formation. Okay, so formation of companies. That is the first thing you're going to start with. So under these, we'll obviously start by looking at the nature of business entities. So issues to do, what is a company? First of all, just business in general, right? Like understanding the difference between a sole proprietor, partnership, and something like cooperative society. All that, and then compare that to actually corporations or companies. So that's the first thing. Like, if you're going to do a business, you have to make a choice. Which entity are you going to use? Of course, they all have their advantages, they all have their disadvantages. And it sort of just depends on why you're starting a business. Because if somebody decides to sell shoes as a sole proprietor, then why are they doing that? Because alternatively, they can do that as a company. So it depends. And then we will talk about the next topic, exactly the steps taken to form a company. That will be the next thing. And yeah, I'll send you the notes. So there's going to be that. And then you're going to look at number 3. The third topic is going to be membership. Okay, membership of companies. And so you need to understand this, Sarah, you need to understand that it's flowing. So it's not so much about writing because you'll get the notes. Just need to understand the entire syllabus, the way it's structured, so that you know where you are. And then the fourth thing that you look at here. So once you get to this point, okay? So once you get to, so once you study these three, once you're done with those 3, we will have formed a company. So at that point, we have a company. So that's part 1. Okay. And then the next part after that, after you formed a company, the next part after you formed a company is to worry about how exactly you're going to finance the company. And that will mean looking at shares, okay, share capital. So in this case, we're talking about financing a company using your own money, because those are the choices. You can either finance a company using your own money, or you can finance a company using other people's money. So if you choose to go with other people's money, so this is actually topic 4, that's topic 5, this is topic 6. If you choose to go with other people's money, then that's debt capital. So that's now formed a company, those are the topics. Financing a company, so do you go with your money or other people's money? And then the third part will be management of the company. And so all the topics here, directors, secretaries, meetings, auditors, and inspectors. So you form a company, you know how to finance it, you know how to manage it. And the last part is, what if you don't want to run that company? So winding up. So liquidation, talk about liquidation or insolvency or alternatives to winding up. And that is pretty much everything that you're supposed to cover in company law. So again, I'll repeat that. Everything you study here will just come down to 4 things. How do you form a company? How do you finance a company? Managing a company, okay? and winding up a company. But then notice, this is not entrepreneurship. So the knowledge you have for entrepreneurship is going to help you here, okay? Because here's what you need to understand about company law. Entrepreneurship is going to help you to make profit. But understanding company law is what is going to help you to hold on to your company. Okay, that's the difference. You know, the way people, you hear people saying these things. So if I had that money, I'll start a business. You know, you won't. Okay, the truth is, you won't start anything that is going to last long because, and that is the reason why, if you look at like most companies in Kenya, the amount of companies we have listed in the stock exchange, okay, the company you have in the securities exchange, how many companies are there? Is it between 65 to, I doubt if they're past 70, which makes you wonder what is happening. Why are people not taking? Why are people not doing IPOs? Because most people will focus on understanding entrepreneurship and then that's it. They don't understand the legal aspects of company, which is what you're going to look at. Everything you're doing here revolves around the legal aspects of companies. Are we together?
Yes.
Edward and Eric, tuko pamoja?
Yes.
Right. So now, we'll still come back and talk about all that stuff. So let's start with the first topic. So first of all, I'm going to be sending the notes. Let's just have this out there. I'll send the notes through the WhatsApp group. Okay. And I mean, you're going to use that group for many things. If you have a question, you can post it there. Notes, past papers, pretty much it's your learning group, okay? So I hope it's not really one of those useless groups where you post motivation quotes and nonsense. I mean, it's just anything academic, anything, you know, that is supposed to aid you to pass your exams, you can put it there. Also, something else about the class, you guys need to start thinking like people who actually run companies. I mean, it's one thing to pass exams. It's another thing to actually know what you're studying. So in this case, I want you to have two mindsets. One, how are you going to pass your exams? Obviously, because that's pretty much what you've paid for. Also, if you have to run a company, what are the legal issues that you need to comply with? Because, you know, if you look at companies and then somebody says, work hard, wake up early, I don't know, like CEOs wake up at 5, who cares even if you wake up at 10? The point is, if you don't have your legal, you know, the company law scenarios set up, you'll be kicked out of your company. And many people, you know, Bill Gates was kicked out of his company at some point. You know, of course, they had to bring him back. Steve Jobs, Larry, all these people, okay? So you need to know that. So remember again, the entrepreneurship part just helps you to make profit. But what helps you to hold on to that profit is that you understand or you don't understand company law. Right. So now, what are we supposed to look at today? So today we'll focus on the nature as well as classification of companies. That's our topic one, nature, classification of companies, which means looking at the various types of companies, okay? Features of a company, issues to do with the sole proprietor, okay? Because that's like a thing, as well as issues to do with partnerships and all that stuff. Now, when we talk about a business, okay? If you're starting a business, now, the first thing you need to worry about, normally, legally, okay, not in terms of entrepreneurship. Normally, people say the first thing you need to worry about is the idea. Yeah, but forget about that. You've already worried about the idea and all that. So the thing you want to worry about in this case is what are the legal dynamics of that business? Okay, meaning what? Meaning, think of it this way. If, let's say you have this guy here called John, okay? So let's say John goes to a bank and takes a loan of how much? 2 million. And John happens to have some real estate. worth 5 million and things of that nature. So if John fails to pay this money, what will the bank do? I mean, it's rhetorical, but what do you think? What is the bank going to do? Edward? Sarah?
The bank will go for his real estate.
So the bank will go for the real estate, right? That seems like a straightforward thing. But now, let's say John ends up forming John Limited. Okay? And he's the owner of this company, John Limited. Then John Limited takes 2 million loan. I mean, John still owns this real estate. In fact, he even owns some other thing that is worth like 10 million. So maybe he has another, maybe he's invested in things like gold. So commodities, okay? Gold, silver, things like those ones. If this company fails to pay this 2 million, so where will the bank get the 2 million from? Sarah, can give it a try. Eric, Edward. Good.
The bank is not obliged to go to John because John and John Limited are two separate entities.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. So what will the bank do? They'll just say bad luck, huh? So the things are starting to happen. Basically, there's a difference between this person and this person. Okay. What if John owned like a shop? Okay. What if he owns a shop? What if he owns a supermarket under his name? See, all these things. I mean, a bunch of stuff that are going to happen here. So it's taxes, it's debts, it's lawsuits, okay? It's, there are many things. People tend to start companies. In fact, here's what I want you guys to think about. People don't just start companies because they want to make profit, okay? These are very, very low resolution way of understanding cooperation. I want to understand something here before we move on. I want to understand that, think of it in terms of biology, evolutionary biology. Okay? Even if you go to like a D or whatever in biology, it doesn't matter. I mean, you probably didn't study evolutionary biology. But think about it. The way nature has perfected things, when you make a mistake, okay? Right now, if you stab yourself, you pay the price. That's it. If you cut off your hand, you're done. So maybe you go for the prosthetics and all that. Basically, nature is such that it punishes immediately, right? You make a mistake, you're done. Now, how can we continue making mistakes and survive? Simple, by having memories, okay? So that's as a human being. You've just moved from company law to biology. So memories, right? And fantasies. You think of all those stupid things in your brain and then you don't do them because you know that one is going to lead me into trouble. Now, in terms of wealth, okay, this is a thing you need to understand. That's why I say looking at companies from profit is a very low resolution way. In terms of wealth, corporations, okay, corporations make it such that you can make a mistake financially and then start afresh through something like bankruptcy. Okay? I mean, you can have a company worth 20 million, leverage it in terms of debt to like 35 million, and the company goes bust. And then if this is John himself has like 50 million in his account, but then he fails to pay these because the 50 million is owned by John Limited, and John Limited goes bankrupt, and it's just bad press, okay, for public, and other people who don't understand anything will be like, yeah, that guy is broke. But then The next day, John is just going to start ABC Limited and move on. So this mistake is not going to follow him. Why? Because he's leveraging the power of corporation. The same thing can be done in terms of owning wealth, transferring wealth, hiding wealth. Let me put that in quotes, come I'm teaching you unethical stuff, but hiding wealth. All these things can be done with companies. So when you meet a bunch of people, just sit down and think, yeah, why do you start a company? Because I want to make profits. Like, really? That's like saying, why do you get married? Because I want to have kids. I mean, you can have kids without marriage. So the thing is, I need to have that kind of mindset as you go through this class. I need you to think high resolution, to think big. To think if you're running a company or if you're owning corporation, what things could you do with it? Anyway, now before you start, having those fantasies, at the end of the day, you need to understand the basic things like the difference between a sole proprietor, a partnership, a cooperative, and incorporated association. For example, when we say a sole proprietor, what are we talking about? I know you're tempted to just say this, but this is just like half the truth. If you have to define a sole proprietor, how would you define it? In a way that it makes legal sense. Vincent? Edward, Eric, come on, guys. It's raining, so can we speak? Eric?
Yes, sole proprietorship. This is a kind of business that cannot be separated from the owner.
So the business and the owner?
Yes, and then it is actually simple to start. In terms of management, he might actually have to do it alone or with the help of the family members.
Right.
In terms of capital, he actually has limited sources of getting the capital. He may have to fund it himself. Yeah. In terms of liability.
Yes.
He, in case his business goes bankrupt, the bank or whoever has funded him will go to the extent of himself and his other properties.
Right. So there's that. Okay. The simple thing I want to take from all that is, for now, is that if you're talking about a sole proprietor, irrespective of the size, this is where most of those entrepreneurship teachers tend to go wrong. They'll be like, a sole proprietor is a small business. Nope, size is immaterial. A sole proprietor is a business where, first of all, it's a business owned by one person, but I could say one human being, and that person and the business are the same, the end. Okay? Now, all those other things are just traits of that business. The person and the business are the same in terms of the law. So the person and the business are legally the same. Are we together, guys? I want us to get that. Okay, Sarah, Eric, Edward, Planta. Are we together?
Yes.
So legally, that person and the business are the same. That's the key thing. Now, the size is material because, look, if you want a shop in which you're just selling juice, okay? Or if you want an entire factory processing juice, and it's you under your name, it's a sole proprietor. The size is immaterial. So the legal thing is what defines it. And this is a very dangerous position to be in. I mean, normally you start because it's easy, but then as time goes by, you need to think of how to change it. So that's the first thing you need to know. If you're starting a business, are you going with a sole proprietor? Are you going with and we shall look at sole proprietors later. Now, a partnership. What's your take? How would you define a partnership? Come on, guys, talk. If you're asked, what is a partnership in terms of business? What do you say? What is it? Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, partnership is a business owned by two or more people, but still cannot be separated from the people.
Okay. So either way, in a partnership, we're simply saying that the people and the business are still the same. Okay. So if you have like those guys there and they own that particular one to enterprise, the only difference is that now they are two. But as far as the legal repercussions are concerned, these guys and this business are still legally the same. Meaning the business troubles are the partner's troubles, and the partner's troubles are the business troubles. So why, therefore, would somebody go for a partnership? And the answer is, well, because there are many. Actually, there are not many. There are 2 to 20, okay? So think about it that way. Minimum 2, maximum 20, unless otherwise stated. But that's the only reason why you do it together, because now you are 2 as opposed to 1. But legally, you're still just as screwed as if you're running a sole proprietor. All right. So you want to start a business. What are your choices? Sole proprietor. What are your choices? Partnership. Cooperative society is just a different thing. Let's not even talk about it. It's not a business. Okay. And the guy called HP, could you stop doing that? So the sole proprietor, what is it called? The cooperative society, that's a different thing. It's not a business, it's actually an association, okay? Created where people come together to pool resources. We'll look at that later. So let's talk about companies, because that is what we're supposed to talk about today. Now, in terms of companies, when we talk about companies, we are simply saying that the person now, okay, we're talking about a situation where you create an artificial person, okay? Here's what you're saying. With a company, so this guy called John here is thinking of how can I run a business in which me and that business are not the same. So that means if John is a person, the company becomes another person. And all this simply stems from the law of persons, where we had artificial and natural person. Now, the natural person are the human beings. The artificial persons are the corporations. And corporation is just an example because you have a corporation aggregate and a corporation sole. What is the difference? So we talk about corporation aggregate and corporation sole. Well, these are where you find businesses. These are just offices. For example, office of the president. So with companies, we're talking about this. Okay, these are entities created by law. Okay, it's a person. It's an entity created by law that can own property. Okay, under its own name. It basically has a bunch of advantages. In fact, let's go into that. So when we talk about a company, the things we need to understand here, first of all, is what are the various types of companies that you can have? And you can classify companies according to many things. You can classify companies according to how they are formed. Okay. You can classify companies according to liability in terms of ownership. You can classify companies in terms of geography, where are they situated? And you can also classify companies in terms of how they are controlled. So all those ones are ways in which we can classify companies. Are we together? I hope where you are, it's not raining like here. But can you guys hear me? Tunapatana. Hello, guys. Eric, Edward. Okay. The rest, Vincent, Rama. That's it. So yeah, because where I am, it's raining, and sometimes that can give some static feedback, and then you don't. Anyway, so you can classify companies according to all these ways. And let's go over them and see what is what. So the first one. Okay, good. So the first one, if you choose to look at companies based on how they are formed, okay? If you have to look at companies in terms of how is that company formed. Now, one, okay, we have, okay, this one is not like, this order is not relevant, okay, it's just the three of them. One, we have chartered companies. A chartered company, what is a chartered company? Well, it's a company formed by a charter, meaning there was some document, okay, or some authority that approved the existence of that company. So they were given a charter to run the company or to run the business. So can you give me an example? Just think. Any company that you can think of that must have a special permission for you to start that company or for you to start that business. Which one? Come on, guys, let's make mistakes quickly. Make mistakes fast and move on. You know, this is the problem with being a grown-up. You know, if you're dealing with kids and you ask them, what is 1 + 1? And they say 11, they don't care. They're saying, yeah, move on. Universities, yep, that's one. Okay, you can't start your own university without a charter. You just treat it as some online education thing or some random institution. But in order for it to be accredited, you're going to need a charter. So university is an example. Anything else? You guys are accountants. What about banks? Okay, bank. You need a charter to have a bank. What about some shipping companies? For a shipping company, you need a charter for that. So that's one way to start a company. I mean, you'll just register it, you'll do all that stuff, but then they'll be like, in order for you to run this or to offer these specific services, you have to be chartered. So are you chartered? No. Then in that case, you cannot run that company. Then we have companies that are going to be started through statutories or through Act of Parliament. What do we have here? Companies that have to be that have been started through the Act of the Parliament. Example of such companies. Railways Corporation. So all the parastatals that you can think of. Parastatals fall under this category. Are we together, guys? Edward and the rest. So parastatals, Akina Kenya Power. Okay. What else do you have? Railways, JKIA, all that stuff. Now, you're not going to be running these because this is the easiest. So registered companies in this case simply means that you start a company through the registration process. Meaning what? Meaning you go to the, nowadays you do it online anyway, but do the name search, fill the forms, pay the fees, you're given a certificate of incorporation, your company has been approved by the registrar of companies. So now you can run that company. So in this case, you're looking at companies in relation to how they are formed. That's one way to classify companies. based on how such companies have been formed. Any question up to that part? Any question? Okay. Now, again, I'll remind you, you don't have to start a company because you want to run a business. So, you can start a company for many reasons. You can start a company because you just want to be a holding company. I mean, think about it right now. If you have money and you want to, okay, let me use this example here. This is pretty much the business life cycle as we know it. Okay, so introduction, growth, maturity, decline. Are we familiar with this, guys? Are we familiar with that business life cycle? Okay. Now let's say you want to be like a multi-millionaire. So you want to be like a proper millionaire, not a single-digit millionaire, or even a billionaire. What options can you take? Well, one, you can actually sell a product, or you can sell services to billion people or millions of people. And that is going to take time. Or three, you can be a billionaire through having an exit plan through IPO or through acquisition. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? If I say you can be a billionaire through acquisition or through IPO, do you understand each other? Because that's the thing with company law. Tuko pamoja up to that part. When I say you can be a billionaire through or a millionaire through acquisition or through IPO, what am I talking about? Anybody? Come on, guys, you're making this into a one-sided conversation. Not so interesting. So what are we talking about? Eric, Edward, Sarah, Vincent, Rama, what are we talking about? Okay. Now let's start with okay, give me a business idea. Like, what are we selling? Give me a product or a service that you're supposed to sell, so that you can use it to explain this, so that you understand why you can form a company. Any example? If you have to start a business, what could you be dealing in? Right, cement. Good. So if we start a cement business, this is going to be a bit hectic because it's something that scaling is going to be a problem. Okay, scaling a cement industry is a problem because it means you have to go and build another industry and build another one and build another one. Let's take something that is easy to scale. Okay, let's say okay, even the cement, it doesn't matter, transport, cement, whatever, all this stuff. Okay, salt, clearing and forwarding, right? So all this stuff, at least that's a service business. So you start your business here, you introduce the business idea. Okay, right. So guys, follow along, because the reason why most people are poor is because, well, it's because they are poor. So that's just the reason why. Now follow along. So cement. Okay. Okay, thank you, Edward. So cement, transport, whatever, all this stuff, right? You introduce the business. No one is aware of you. And then you start gaining traction, a bit of growth. So when you start getting a bit of growth, what do? You start getting investors, meaning you start selling shares of that business. Sasa, if you don't understand shares, bear along, topic 4, but let's talk about it now. So when you sell shares, what are you doing? You're simply exchanging part of the business for revenue. Sasa, as in at this point, you own 100% of that business, which is worth nothing, zero. But then as it starts to grow, this number starts to change. This is what you call the company value or valuation. The value of the company starts to change the more the company is doing business. The more clients you have, the perception of the market or the perception of people in that market about your company starts to change. I want us to go along so that by the time we get here, we understand this concept. So you started. The value wasn't that much. You start getting clients to buy your cement. You start getting people to buy your transport services. The clearing and forwarding thing, start having people wants to get things from China. Okay? So the value starts to increase. As the value increases, you need revenue. So you're getting more purchase orders that you can't fulfill. Maybe you want to expand and open to a new branch. What do? Well, what do? You can hold on to 100% of a business that is dying, or you can start having other people come in. So you start having investors. So maybe now you've sold 20% of the business, which means you own 80. Okay, get these numbers here. You own 80, 20% is owned by John, Mary, and some other person. Okay, so maybe Fahima, doesn't matter. Okay, so they own 20%. We are continuing. What is happening? It's no longer your business. It's your business plus these people. But the value has gone up. So the value has gone up, you are growing. And then now you get to the point where now you have a large market share. So let's say the value of this company now, it's like worth 200 million in valuation. Okay. So, okay, 200, not 2 million, 200 million in valuation. Okay. So if that is the value of the company, 200 million in valuation, how much of that company do you own? Now, before you take out your calculators, just remember it's 80, 20, which means you own 80%. Are we together? Yes, Vincent. Okay, Sarah. The rest, Rama. Edward. Good. So you own 80% of what? Of 200 million. But, but it's not money. It's just value. Tunaelewana? This is where you start seeing witchcraft now. It's just value. The company is valued at 200 million, which means your value of that company is 200 million. You know the way you watch news and then you're like, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, whatever. It's value. That's on paper. It doesn't mean that when you say Elon Musk is worth 300 billion, it doesn't mean that he has 300 billion that you got Mali in a room, you can count. It's this thing I've just told you here, the value at this point. So now the question is, how do you turn this value into actual money and become the millionaire? What do? Anybody? If you want to convert this value, this 80% value that now you have into money, what do? Good. You sell. Sasa, you sell your shares. Sasa. So that is your exit strategy. You either sell the company, okay, or you sell your shares. So you can sell your shares. If you sell your shares through stock exchange, we say initial public offer, you've done an IPO. People come buy the shares, they bring in money, you sell yours, you walk away, or you sell a portion of the money. Maybe you sell 30% or 50%. of that, and then you have money. So that's what's happening. Do you understand that concept before now I say what I wanted to say with all this? Anybody who's floating? Are we on the same page, guys? Tuko pamoja? All right. So now, here's the new way of doing business in the 21st century. Okay. Here's what actually happens. You know the way you see those TikTok millionaires, some guy starts an app and suddenly they become a millionaire. This is what they do. These people start a business, and then whenever they make profit, they invest back in the business. They don't pay themselves. What are they doing? They are simply pumping the value of the company. It's called pump and dump scheme. Okay. You start a company, and then you say, as the founder, I'm not earning any money from the company. Whatever money I get, I invest back in the company. Okay. And I avoid debts so that the value of the company keeps on going up. So valuation, remember at that point, the person probably owns like 90% of the company. They sold 10% just to get capital to keep on going. So they keep on bump and doing that and doing that and doing that. Spend a lot of money on the internet, okay? Running advertisement, paying influencers, real influencers, not those people who are doing that funny business but calling themselves the socialite. You're not a socialite, you're a prostitute, not those people. But real influencers, they pay those people to promote the business, and the business keeps on growing. It's growing, it's growing. So the value goes up, and then what do? Then they sell the business. So suddenly, their 90% become millions. Of course, the person who buys the business realizes that there's nothing I'm going to do with this business, but that's the new way. So when I say, when you start a company, you don't have to start a company with old school mentality at it. I want to sell socks, okay? And then I'll do videos saying, I started my business with 2 pairs of socks. Now I own shoes or something. I don't know. It's not that, okay? For these people, it's just, I want to start a company. I want to increase the value of that company, and then I want to be acquired. For others, it's I want to start a company, and then the company doesn't sell anything. It simply buys other companies. Are we together? Like, I start a company, call it ABC, and then ABC simply acquires other company. But they like a company called Alphabet Inc. Alphabet Inc. What is Alphabet Inc? Anybody? Well, this is the company that owns Google, the company that owns YouTube, the company that owns other stuff. So it's just an acquisition company. You start a company and you don't do anything. You just buy shares in other companies. Okay. So whenever those companies make profit, you get dividends and you keep on growing and you keep on growing. And when the shares of those companies go up, you can sell. So my point is, okay, guys, there is more to corporations than just trading. So when I say companies, I want you to think, again, as I said, think big. So all that, those things we just talked about, you can run all that through a registered company or through, well, this one is a bit tricky, or through a chartered company. Now, that is one way of understanding companies. Any question from, well, anywhere in the company before we move on to the next thing? Right. So that's jiongeleshi hapa. Any question?
Yes, a question, Mwalimu.
Go on. Go ahead.
You said statutory companies are formed under an act of parliament.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned that companies are not necessarily formed to target profit.
Yeah.
So this statutory company is formed by government.
Mm-hmm.
What could be the reasons the government is forming all these companies?
Well, because the government needs money. Okay, just because you and I don't want to make profit doesn't mean that the government doesn't want profit. Think about it. Look, if we are okay, where does the government get money? You know, most of the time when I don't want to be political, I find politics to be a bit petty. But whenever you see, like right now, I was looking at something on Twitter, and I don't know. Apparently, IMF has just given Kenya some loan, and there was another loan. Whenever you see your government taking loans or spending, in fact, from an economics point of view, whenever you see the government doing anything, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, the first question that should come in your mind is, where is the money coming from? So whenever you see the president, CG is out there in another country making those big speeches, and then you're one of the people who gets online and say, yeah, our president is a hero, you're an idiot. Okay, you need to ask yourself, whose money is that guy spending, first of all? Because the government only has how many sources of income? One, tax. Two, debt. The end. Now, there's a third one, which will be from revenue generated from businesses. And that is where this one comes in. Okay. So they start these businesses, which are supposed to offer basic or needed services to citizens. And then they own shares, or not they eat, because it's a government. It owns shares. And then that money is supposed to go to treasury. While, like in the case of Kenya Power, now we have shareholders. Or in the case of Safaricom, we have shareholders, but then the government also has stake there. So just as much as you're going to make your dividend, the government will get some money to go and finance it. But then if you look at something like tax, it doesn't matter how hard you tax people, it's never going to be enough. That is why taxing people so that you can prosper is actually a useless idea. I mean, it only makes sense up to a certain point, and then it stops making sense, because the more you tax people, if you tax entrepreneurs, what entrepreneurs will do, they'll find another place where they can run business. For example, they'll go to Tanzania, they'll go to Uganda, they'll just set up the head office there and then run operations here. And then before they pay you tax, they'll say that company owns rights, and then we have to pay the Tanzanian rights first, and then whatever we are left with, that is what you're going to pay in tax. Google does that. Anytime I get my check from Google, it will either come from Ireland, okay, or because they are paying 5% there, and yet it's a US company. So that's completely a different game. But so to answer your question, that was it Eric or Edward? Who asked that question? It was Eric or Edward. Oh, yeah, Manda happy then. So anyway, whoever asked that, it's because they also want to generate one, revenue, and two, to offer certain services that are left in the hands of private, members would be hard. Can you imagine if, I mean, first of all, you normally say some of these companies to be privatized. Usually just say that because you realize that they are already privatized in quotes. Like somebody says, Kenya Power needs more competition. Yeah, that's because technically the people are running it as a private company, benefiting a few people. But the whole idea was a bit of socialism. A bit of socialism mixed with capitalism, so that the capitalism doesn't outweigh socialism. So the government does the socialism aspect through statutory companies, while everybody else runs their capitalist sort of businesses. Does that answer that question? Okay, now you ask that question and then you disappear. You guys. Any other question other than, let me see, other than guarantee and limited? That one you're coming to it, Vincent. Any other question other than that? Because I'm going to look at that. All right. Now, moving on to the next thing. So the other way you can classify companies is through liability. Okay. You can look at them through liability. So Vincent, here's where we answer your question. When we say that a person who starts a company, let's say when you say John, is not the same as the company. Okay? that John is a different person from the company. When we say that, it sounds like if it makes sense because it's simple. It's like, that is as simple as saying, from this year 2024, I want to be very serious with my finances. It's not that simple. Or this year, I want to focus on my goal. Those things are not linear. The question then becomes, if John and this company, okay, in fact, let's say if John and John Limited are not the same, then the other question becomes, what is the relationship between John and John Limited? Now that they're not the same, and yet they have a relationship. What is that relationship? In short, what I'm asking you guys is, if you start a company, Sai, okay, whether it's Eric, Rama, Sarah, Vincent, Clanta, if you start a company, what relationship do you have with that company? Anybody? In fact, Vincent, that you can answer your own question. What relationship will you be having with your company? Come on, guys. Well, if you become part and parcel of that company, it means you and that company are the same. So at what point do we distinguish that similarity? At what point will you and that company not be the same? So that's the thing. Okay. So here's the thing. If you start a company, you become a shareholder. Okay. Or you become a guarantor. Follow along because this is going to be tricky. You either become a shareholder or you become a guarantor of ABC Limited. Now the question then is, when do you become a shareholder? In order for you to be a shareholder, what is it that you must have done? Anybody? Sarah? For you to become a shareholder of Safaricom, what must you do? Well, you have to acquire the shares, right? You have to buy the shares. Good. Now, buy shares. So let's say a company has 2,000 shares. So, and each share is worth 100. So effectively what you're saying is that this company is worth 200,000. That is pretty much what you're saying. So if Vincent, let's go with you. So if Vincent owns 500 shares, then how much money does Vincent owe that company? So Vincent has ordered 500 shares. We look at shares, but let's say you want to buy shares and now you want 500 shares. How much money, if that company is looking to raise money, what is the maximum amount of money that that company can take from you, Vincent? 500 shares at 500.
50,000.
So 50,000. That is the maximum. Meaning what? Meaning your relationship with that company is limited to either 50,000 or 500. In fact, we won't even talk about the amount. We just say your relationship with that company is limited to 500 shares, whatever 500 shares are worth, because today they could be 50,000. Tomorrow, maybe something bad happens, the value is cut by half, and suddenly it's at 25,000, or if the company doubles in its operation, and then it goes from 100 to 1,000, it doesn't matter. Your relationship to that company as a shareholder is limited to the shares you have. Sasa. Are we together? So now what if, again, so that's that. What if you ordered 500,000, but you've only paid for 100 and you've not paid for 400. So paid and paid. So what is happening here? If you've paid for 100,000 shares, then it means how much does the company owe you and how much do you owe the company? So let's look at the relationship, because that relationship goes either way. The company's relationship towards you is limited to, even if that company makes 1 billion, how much do they owe you if you've only paid for 100 shares?
10,000.
10,000, right? So the relationship of the company towards you is limited to 10,000. Your relationship towards the company, in short, what you owe them 40,000.
40,000.
Okay. So now, when you say that a company is limited by shares, so first of all, we talk about limited liability. We're simply saying the relationship you have with that company, okay? Your liability towards that company. How far can it go? So the liability can either be restricted by shares or it can be restricted by what you've guaranteed. For now, you're talking about shares. So when John, in this case, we're talking about John. So the relationship of John to this company is limited to how much share John has paid. So the ones that you've paid, that is what the company owes you. The one that you've not paid but was allotted to you, allotment means those are the shares you've given you, then that is how much you owe the company. Okay, up to there, tuko pamoja. That is limited by, where liability is limited by shares. Anybody who's not getting that before we go to guarantee? Anybody who's having a problem understanding limited by shares? Rama? Are you on the same page? Okay. Now let's talk about good. Let's talk about limited by guarantee. Now this one I'll just have to clear this and let's start afresh. So guys, pay attention because this one is going to be a bit personal. I want you to think of someone you love, okay? Which could be your child. You don't have to love all your kids. I mean, some kids are just problematic, but because you're a parent, you tell them, no, penda wote. Or it could be your child. It could be a significant other. So boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, it doesn't matter. So, and if you don't love anybody, it's okay. Don't worry. Easy to pia si lazima. So, let's say this person comes to you and says, you know what, let me just pick a name here so that we can go with that name. So Sarah, you're just going to use your name for now. Tough luck. Okay. So Sarah, let's say Sarah, you have like 20 million and they're aware. This person is aware. Okay. Your significant other, child, whatever. They're aware, brother, sister, whatever. And they say, look, I want to start a business. Okay. And they're like, yeah, that's a good idea. How much will the business cost? And they tell you it will cost me 200,000. This is how much I want to start a business, 200,000. So, okay, this one goes to everybody. I'm just using Sarah here because we need to write a name there. But to all of you have a choice. Choice one, you can give this person the money, yes. Or choice two, you can ask them a lot of questions before giving them the money. So how do you make sure that you don't lose this entire 200? Okay, I mean, just because you have 20 million doesn't mean that you just keep on giving people 200,000. It's, you know, think of it this way. If you have 1,000, do you just give people 20 shillings because you have 1,000? Yes or no? You just say, mimi niko na 1,000, hebu kutaka 20 bob kuchukua. Does it work that way? No, it doesn't work that way, okay? You have to respect money. So you won't just give them money because you have. So now, how do you ensure that you don't lose this money? You tell them, okay, go bring me your business plan. And then you look at the plan. And then now you get into a contract of guarantee. Okay? You guarantee to give them, not them, in this case, the company, their business, but I'm just saying them, but I want to think of it as you give their business. So you guarantee to give that business 200,000. But you structure it. You say, according to your plan, I see you need this money in 4 phases. So phase 1, maybe phase 1 will cost 100,000. Okay. Phase 2 will cost, I don't know, okay, 50,000. Let me just not be lazy here. So phase 2 will cost 50,000. Phase 3, 30,000. And maybe phase 4, the remaining 20. So you tell them, I guarantee to give you this money if and when you need it, okay, as long as you've finished the previous phase successfully. So that means you give them 100K, because that's the first thing. They start working. So if they fail at this point, then you only lose 100. But if they succeed, then since you continue the guarantee, it's like, okay, this one was a success based on the KPIs or the metrics that you put in place. Now let's move on to the next phase. You write them another 50K check. They do that, 30K, 20K. But if things don't work, then you save your money. So what you're doing here is your relationships. In this case, if it is Sarah and this company, let's call it ABC Limited. So that person started ABC Limited. Your relationship with that company is limited to what you had guaranteed. Notice how different that is from shares. Because with shares, you just bought shares. You don't even know that you're using the money. So in this case, your relationship with the company is limited to what you've guaranteed. Not the shares you have, because you don't even have shares in this case. It's just, I'll give you this money as a loan, a guarantee. Maybe you'll pay it back with interest, or maybe in exchange, I don't know, whatever it is that you want from that company, that will depend on the person. But that is how companies can be limited by guaranteed, or companies can be limited by shares. Any question?
Yes, a question.
Right.
Yeah. Now, limited by guarantee, assuming now I have made the promise of giving the company 200,000.
Yes.
And then along the way, the company makes loss, and I've paid 100,000.
Yes.
And the company is now facing bankruptcy, and it has to pay back the money that it owed. As the company is paying that money, how much do I still owe the company?
Well,
I have paid 150.
You owe them the
and
entire
I had
amount.
promised 200.
You're supposed to pay the entire amount. You owe
The-
them.
the 50.
In fact, they need that 50 so that they can use it to pay debts. So in fact,
So I
continue.
thought, according to your explanation, Mwalimu, my relationship ends with them with the money that I've already paid.
No, this explanation was just because you don't want to lose this money. This is not like how all guarantees work. I only broke it down because I said, this person you love, do you give them the money or do you ask them questions? Because sometimes there is no these options. Sometimes the guarantee is you want 200K and you want the entire amount. That's it. Okay. So if it is structured this way, then you can run away from paying the 50K. But if it is structured this way, where you guarantee 200 and you pay 200, that's it. You pay them the whole amount. Sawa. Eric?
Yes, it's okay.
So it comes down to how you've structured it. Okay. It's all about structure. And that is, remember the way I started this class by saying, by understanding company law, you can hold on to your company. By not understanding company law, you'll be one of those people who goes on social media saying, business is hard. No, you are the idiot, okay? I mean, everything is hard, everything is easy. It just depends on what you know and what you don't know. So, look, something else that I want us to understand in relation to liability. That was just liability in relation to shares and guarantee. But when we talk about liability, okay, we are simply saying, what exactly can the company, to what degree is the company accountable for anything? And to what degree are the people who own that company accountable, okay? So companies with limited liability simply means that the company's debts are not the owner's debts. So, for example, that's another way to understand it. So if it is liability by shares, that is just the relationship between the company and the owner. But liability in terms of the company and outsiders, nataka tuelewe, this is like a second thing I'm talking about. The first thing all those things I've just mentioned was the relationship between the company and the people who own the company. Sindio, are we together there? Now I'm saying the relationship between the company and everybody else the company is related with. Okay? So if the company gets into debt, if ABCD is in debt, then it's the company that is in debt, not the people who own the company. Okay? Remember the example we started with. If you borrow 200 million from a bank as you, versus if you borrow 200 million from a bank as ABC, but you have like, okay, in fact, let me just use an example here that is easier to understand. Look, let's say you have 20 million. In fact, let me make it more realistic. You know, one of the things that I used to hate when I was doing accounting, that was kitambo, was when the teacher would show up and then say, ABC Enterprise made a profit of 20 million. I'm like, dude, I only have 30 shillings. Yeah, kutembea because I have to walk and then the panda gari place ya 20 and then I'll use the 10 shillings to buy those biscuits. It's a ginger. So stop talking about 200 million. So let's make it more realistic, okay? So right now in your bank account, let's assume you have 100,000. I think this one looks more realistic, right? I mean, there. So you have this 100,000 in your account. Right. It's not money that just popped. It's money that has been unaweka. Okay. So, and you want a loan, yeah, 50,000. Well, this money, okay, this is a bit unorthodox. In fact, all of you here probably, unless you work in the bank, are probably going to look at this and say, that can't happen. But it actually happens. You know, you can easily tell the bank, look, let's have a deal, okay? I have 100K here. I won't touch it. Lock it and give me a loan of 50K. If I fail to pay this 50K, just go here and take 100K plus the interest. So do you get that concept? Now, scale that concept to something like a business. So this is a business, not your personal account. This is a business account. For a personal account, this one doesn't make sense. So this is a business account. So scale this and turn it into something like 20 million. Even it doesn't matter whether it's 20 or 100, the example is the same. So let's say you have a company that has 200 or rather 20 million or 100,000, it doesn't matter. Okay. This money, you've named it share capital. It's what people contributed. And by people, it's probably like 4 of you. Okay. And this is 50, or this can be 5 million. You need 5 million loan. If you take a loan, how much interest are you normally charged on average? Anybody? Come on, guys. Don't get. On average, 13%. Are we going with that? 13%. Anybody wants to say something different? 17%. The point is, it depends, right? But you can negotiate. Let's assume you can't negotiate. You can negotiate this number in the chin. Because if you're taking 5 million, you can negotiate a lower number. If you're taking 50,000, obviously it's sad. Now, this is interest. Acha nafundisha vitu nafundishwa wangu kwa class sasa. Ndio uzuri ya understand company law. Interest, right? If you make a profit as a company, how much do you pay in tax? If you make a profit as a company, how much do you pay in tax? Corporate tax is all I'm asking. So mtu asiseme it depends. Corporate tax, 30%. Okay? So, right? Now let's say 30%. Good, 30%, 30%. Good. Let's say you want to reduce this 30%. Okay? And you normally pay, you know that your accounting year ends at June. And you've already projected that you're going to make 4 million profit by that time, which means you need to give the government 30% of 4 million. And yet you have valuation of 20 million in share capital, which you don't touch. So why don't you go to that bank in, March and take a loan of 5 million against the capital? Now you're going to pay 13 because you'll negotiate, probably going to be lower, but let's say you even pay 17, pay 17% interest. Now, these like the year thing, right? And then when it comes to tax, when you're looking at your profit, you have a 5 million loan, which means you're going to make a loss of 1 million. Sindio? Are we together? Yeah, so now you're starting to think as accountants, right? You have a loss of 1 million. So now you can't pay the government 30% because there's nothing to pay 30%. Right? So instead you pay 17%. And how much do you save in this scenario? 13%. What have I just told you in this case? I've just explained to you why rich people always have debts. Because they know it's cheaper to pay this than to pay that. And you do that because you're using a company, because the company's liability is limited. Okay, that's how Warren Buffett does it. He'll just take money. He has like 200 billion and he needs 20 million. He will take a loan of 20 million instead of taking this, because the moment you take this money from the bank, suddenly now it's income. Okay, now you have, because it shares. When you have shares, it's just a number. But the moment you turn shares into money, it means you sell the shares. Once you sell the shares, now that's income. Now you have to pay tax on that. So if you leave it where it is through valuation, take a loan, now you're going to pay interest, and then you pay less than that. Okay, who's confused? Because we need to tie this one down to the point we are making about limited liability. Are we on the same page? Wait, you guys are quiet. I don't know what's happening. Eric, Sarah, Vincent, Roma, same page. Good. So now, so that's the positive side. Okay, this is the positive side. Now you're probably looking at this and saying, wow, that's a nice idea. Remember, this thing can backfire. Okay, so let's look at the negative side. So this company decides to take a loan of 20 million. So the company is that John Limited takes 20 million loan. Now John himself has 50 million in the bank, in yake personal account. I don't know why he has that, but he has that. And then John decides to do some tradings and decides to buy some things, and then COVID, and then Ruto, and tax, and whatever, and he makes a loss of like 35 million. So now that 20 that he had, he still owes another 15 million. So in short, the company is bankrupt, whatever Eric was talking about now. So in this case, what happens? The company can't pay the loan. The bank will not tell John, hey, look, for you 50 yako, pay this one. Okay? Because the company's relationship is limited. Okay, the company's relationship is limited. Meaning what? Their liability towards John, the only thing John owes this company is any shares he had not paid. If he had fully paid the shares, hakuna kitu ya anadeni. So the company will just have to find a way of paying this loan. If they can't, they file bankruptcy. What happens? Asset realization, how much is the asset, minus debts, if anything, then we pay kama kuna, bad luck, the company closes, and John just walks away and starts another company. So that is what we mean by limited liability. It means the relationship of that company to the people it's dealing with is limited. The relationship of that company to the people who owes it is also limited, either by shares or by liability. And if you talk about shares, limited by shares or limited by guarantee. So for both. Okay, I think that answers that. Now, if you create an unlimited liability company, it means your relationship with that company is, well, the company's debts are your debts. This one you only do if you're fundraising. So like if you're fundraising, maybe you work in a lab and you're working on this new thing for cancer and you need to raise money. So usually that company is not for profit, which means when people give you money, they're giving you money and they are hoping that you and that company are the same thing so that if you misuse that money, they can sue you personally. So in that case, it's not for profit. Usually it's just for companies that are trying to raise funds. But most companies that want to make profit and things of that nature will have limited liability relationship. So that's another way of classifying companies, either in terms of liability or not liability. Unless somebody has a question, we move on. Now you can also look at company in terms of who owns them. Are they owned by the government? In which case, parastatals. Are they owned by private people? In which case, they are private companies. Are partnership examples of nope. A partnership is not a company. Partnership is just a partnership, okay? In fact, with partnership, we shall see that in the next class. But with partnership, usually the business, ikiwa kwa deni, if that business is in debt, the partnership business, the partners are also in debt. The only difference is how much they each owe, and that will depend with how many shares in quotes, but more like how much they contribute towards the partnership. We shall see that, but it's not the same thing. That's Eric. A partnership is just the same as a sole proprietor. The difference is that now you are 2 people or 5 people. I think that will make you understand it until you look at it. And so either the business can be owned by a government or by private people. So when you say non-governmental, you're simply talking about private companies. Any other question? And number 4, we can also look at companies in terms of where they exist. So domicile simply means where they are. So here you have national companies. These are all companies in Kenya are national, okay? And then we have foreign companies. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you see a foreign company, we're seeing a company that has head office or its main office outside Kenya, okay? So that makes it a foreign company. For instance, Nokia or Samsung or Coca-Cola, although these are multinational companies, but the point is they're foreign. So what makes it multinational is the fact that they're in more than one country. But any company whose head office is outside Kenya, but it's operating in Kenya, is a foreign company. And if it is in more than Kenya, more than one country, it becomes a multinational company. Okay. Any question up to that bit? We look at subsidiaries. Oh, yeah. Are you guys still there? And you guys have gone to eat supper. So we have holding and subsidiary companies. What is the difference? Anybody? What is a holding company and what is a subsidiary company? The way you understand it. Come on, Sarah, Rama, Vincent, Eric. A holding company, what is the difference? Yeah. So is it one of those things where you say we know but you don't know how to explain? Is that the situation here? So think about it this way. Let's say you start your company, let's call it ABC. And from the examples tulisema hapa, there was a company, there was cement, so that's cement. There was salt, there was cement, there was clearing and forwarding. Okay. All companies are corporations, Vincent. Okay. All companies are corporations as far as company law is concerned. It's only that when people say corporations, they assume you're talking about big companies. Okay. I mean, legally speaking, they are corporations. It's just what type of corporation is it? Is it a limited liability corporation? Is it a public traded corporation? Okay. So look, we've started ABCD, and this company, what is their job? They're processing cement. So guys, follow along. Alafu, we make profit, we have profit, but then somebody says, you know that business here, Nani? Let me just pick a name here. So you know that business here, Rama Pale, that business for clearing and forwarding, they're making a lot of money, and you want a piece of that action. So what do? This ABC Limited, which is a cement company, takes this profit and buys shares in. So this other one, so let's call it Rama Inc. Incorporated. Okay, so they buy let's say they buy how many? Let's say they buy 51% shares. So what has just happened here? So now ABC, okay, which is a cement company, holds 51% shares in this company, which is a clearing and forwarding company. So what is the relationship between these companies? ABC becomes a company, holding company, and this one becomes a subsidiary because they have less than 50% shares. And so ABC can still do that. But in fact, this company can also be like, okay, we have some extra money. There is this company here which is processing salt. Why don't we buy some shares there? And they buy, they also buy, okay, let's just go with 51. But they can even buy 20%, doesn't have, but they buy 51% shares here. So suddenly, this is a holding company. It's a holding company here, which makes this one subsidiary. This one is a holding company because they own 51% shares here, and this one is a subsidiary. So that is how these big corporations operate. Okay. So you just don't start a business here and then you're selling shoes and then you're okay. Once you start making profit, you can be like, I also want to be in a pharmaceutical industry, but I don't want to start a company processing drugs. So what do? I'll buy shares in that company that makes medicine. So your shoe business owns 5% in a company that makes medicine. It owns 20% in another company that makes softwares. So it works that way, okay? Think about it. Think about people who drive cars. Volkswagen, the VW. You find somebody saying, VW is useless. Well, that company owns Lamborghini. Okay, they own Lamborghini. They own Porsche. Okay, so they own Bugatti. So what is happening? It's VW, just buy. So anytime you buy more than 51% of a company, you become a holding company. So here is how it works. 50-50 joint venture. So 51% plus holding, and the other one becomes subsidiary. 20%, that just gives you significant influence. It means you have a seat at the board, but you're not holding, you're not anything. Okay, so I think if I go past there, I'll just be talking peke yangu and you guys are just there. Any question up to that part? Any question? All right, so look at this question here. Just one, somebody posted this on your on the WhatsApp group. So I just saw it today and I was like, good. Let me use it in class. Are you able to see this past paper? Guys, can you confirm? Okay. So I just want you to look at just one question. Okay. This one. Part 2, why not? Okay. That one too. Explain the concept legal personality in the context of corporate entities. What does it mean? And then explain 3 classification of companies on the basis of liabilities. So you can be like, we didn't talk about them. We talked about them. Okay. Shares, guarantee, and then just debts. So anyway, there is that. So you should be in a position to answer that. And by the time we are done, okay, this one will be topic 2. So topic 2. But by the time we are done, you'll be in a position to. By the time we're done with topic 1, you'll be in a position to answer this, which you should be. You're not done, but you should be. And then this is topic 2. Then you continue. So, guys, any issue so far? Anything that we need to take into account as we move on forward? Eric, Sarah, Vincent, Rama? Are we okay?
Mwalimu,
Mhm.
hapo question 1B, examine 3 classification of companies on the basis of liability.
Mhm.
It's not on the basis of, as in limited and unlimited.
Yeah, but limited and unlimited will just be covered up a debt, because if you say limited and unlimited, you're 21. What are the other 2? Because
So we say classification of companies on the basis of liability.
yeah,
We explain in terms of shares, guarantee, and debt.
yeah, a company can be limited by the liability of a company can be limited to shares. It can be limited by guarantee, and then the one that I said for debt here, that's why you can say it can also be unlimited. Okay, which means if the company is in debt, you're also in debt. So it's just English anyway. You go to sao. It's just English. It will just come down to how you explain it. Okay. Anything else? So whoever posted this, thank you for that. And at least I'm project you compare to today. Right. So let's end it there, and I'll send the notes in the WhatsApp group. If I forget, one of you can remind me, because this is a bit too sad. Sasa, the notes are topic 1 in that WhatsApp group. So as you go through the notes and whatever material you have, you can just compare. So it's not like if I put the notes there, so now you stop reading anything else. Okay, it's just that they're summarized, but nothing. So there's that. Otherwise, have a lovely evening. I'll see you in the next class.